Hello viewers, and welcome to yet another Warhammer 40,000 Conquest video production. My name is Mitch, and I am the Hive Tyrant. Today I'm absolutely honored to present a very special, succinct, and audio-only installment in my series of Community Spotlight videos, in which I had the opportunity to sit down and speak with one of the most prominent and widely renowned members of the entire LCG community, the Conquest 2014 World Champion himself, Jeremy Zwirn. Specifically, we discuss how he got involved in gaming, his competitive background, style of tournament preparation and play, and of course, touch on the philosophy behind his approach to the game. We chat about what differentiates him from a typical player, and he provides advice and wisdom regarding the entire notion of competitive gaming. So, if you enjoyed this video, remember to hit the like button, ensure you're subscribed, and you're encouraged to share, because the more engagement this video receives, the more viewers are reached, and ever the broader you help grow our Conquest community. But with our introduction aside, I'm overjoyed to bring you an interview with our 2014 World Champion, Jeremy Zwirn. Well, thank you very much for joining me today, but before we delve into the thick of our interview, please do me the great honor of introducing who you are and sharing with our viewers just a little bit about yourself.
Thanks, Mitch. I'm Jeremy Zwirn, and I'm an LCG-aholic. I definitely have a problem, but I'm willing to admit that.
Well, you're in good company.
That's good.
It's a safe place.
I go by Dwarven Pony on the forums, although I don't post very often. I'm from the Twin Cities, so I'm right next door to FFG's offices in the game center. So it's very, very fortunate to be right by them and get to hang out with them from time to time and play some games with them. It's very nice.
Well, most definitely. And I mean, it's fantastic to finally have a chance to sit down and speak with you. And, I can barely express just how appreciative I am of your willingness to come on and do this interview today. Clearly, if our viewers don't already know who you are, you've become a very established, kind of widely renowned figure within the competitive LCG scene, and not just for Conquest, but for, a real range of different games. You happen to be the Warhammer Invasion 2012 World Champion, the Android Netrunner 2012 World Champion, the Call of Cthulhu 2013 and 2014 World Champion, and of course, the 2014 Conquest LCG World Champion. You happen to win the first ever official tournament, the Worldeater event at Gen Con 2014. You've got a host of regional championships under your belt for, a swath of different games. You've won store championships, all kinds of different things. So something I've wondered about, and something our viewers I'm sure are curious about, is what exactly is your background in gaming? Like, what were your humble beginnings?
Well, I've always been a fan of board games. My family played them ever since I can remember, just the basics like Monopoly or Goldfish, whatnot. And then back in about 94, I discovered Magic the Gathering, so as soon as I saw that, that just blew me away. I was like, wow, this is a really innovative game. Became obsessed with that. I've been playing that for the most part ever since. And then about a dozen years ago, I discovered Carcassonne and Settlers of Catan. Those games kind of blew me away at first, too. I was used to, the basic Monopolies and all that, so
Sure.
to kind of get a feel of those European games, I was like, wow, it's just way different. And then sooner to that, I discovered, Power Grid and Kalis, Agricola, those types of games, those real European games, and really got into those for many years. And soon, about 3 years ago, during my usual game night groups, a couple guys were playing Warhammer Invasion pretty often. So they kind of invited me over to take a look at it, and I sat down and watched it, and it was kind of interesting, so got to play a couple games with them, and just like that, I became obsessed with LCGs. Netrunner came out about the same time, so I kind of dove headfirst into those, and haven't looked back ever since.
Well, it definitely doesn't hurt that you've got such a close proximity to the FFG headquarters.
Right.
But what exactly was it about, like, the nature of competition that you were really interested by? Like, what was the allure there?
Just always been kind of like that battle of wits between your opponents, just coming from a similar background with people you like to hang out with, and kind of testing your mettle against them and trying to best one another and stuff like that.
Sure. Well, it's definitely a good opportunity to kind of flex some mental muscle and really, give your all against another person. Like Conquest in particular, I think there's just so many different things to consider, so many variables and different factors in play at the same time. It's just an absolutely fantastic opportunity to really throw yourself up against somebody else and just see who can, do the most mental mathematics and all sorts of different things like that. But what is it exactly about maybe the nature of competitive gaming that you've stuck with it for so long? After so many years from your beginnings with Magic the Gathering, why stick with it for, going on 20-some years now?
A lot of us, I guess, the community is almost all the people we've met throughout the years, a lot of friends, and it's hard to turn away from that. I always meet new people, and very, very few bad apples throughout the years. Most of them are just really great people to hang out with, and it's just that whole competition thing. Just take it to the next level and try to keep trying to best yourself and improve. And
Well, definitely. I suppose you've mentioned a huge range of games you've played over the years. You've certainly, taken to the LCG model, as have so many others, but what is it exactly about Conquest that kind of made you give it a look in the first place? Like, what's the unique appeal of this game?
overall, it's just a damn good game. It's very well designed and well developed. I guess my favorite aspect about it would probably be the command dial. It's one of the best game mechanics I've ever seen. Just that each turn deciding where to commit your warlord, trying to figure out where your opponent's going to commit theirs. And there's that suspense as you're sitting there dialing back and forth trying to figure it out. Very, very crucial decision that happens each turn. Really shapes the game, and it's definitely my favorite thing about Conquest. Trying to figure out where I'm going to go and then where my opponent's going to go, and try to counter what they're doing or whatnot. Lots and lots of decisions there to make.
Well, I mean, that certainly sets it apart from something like Magic the Gathering, where there's the entire additional kind of spatial component on top of deck construction, on top of all the other typical considerations. You've got to pick what you're deploying where you're committing your warlord where. I suppose during an actual match, seeing as how you've got, so many championships under your belt, clearly you're a very capable, talented player. How do you think about the various elements of the game that might differ from someone that's more strictly casual?
Well, I'm trying to think back to when I was a casual player. I guess one thing I really did back then was really plan ahead, look forward in advance, the foresight. I think that's very, very crucial, especially in Conquest, to try to look ahead and see how the game's going to go several turns down the line, especially with the planet layout, and it's incredibly important trying to decide what planets you should go for and what planets you can let go, and let your opponent take that one, or where to block them from winning the game, and try to map it out as best you can. I mean, of course, it's not easy to do, and things happen, and you have to adapt, but that's definitely one thing I really didn't think I did when I was a casual player, is really have the foresight to plan ahead and adjust.
Sure, just kind of acting with, like, your victory condition in mind and with your opponent's.
Yeah, you have to always have that in mind, that all throughout every game is who can win where and how soon, and you have to be able to adapt quickly too, as things change. But if you ignore that, I've done that myself. I forget exactly who can win where, and so my opponent will go to a planet and win it, and like, oh, that's right, I forgot about that. And game over just like that. So yeah, definitely have to have that in mind at all times.
Well, definitely. I suppose, are there any other elements that you've started paying increasing amounts of attention to as you've gone from, a filthy casual to a more world champion class player?
Um, it's hard to say. It's, specifics. It's of course the command war is very important. Trying to win that as best you can, and or to just stop your opponent, and even like the deployment phase. Trying to stall your deploys to gain more information. There's a lot of little things you do like that to try to guess what your opponent's doing. I guess one thing is just try to put yourself in your opponent's shoes. What are they thinking? What do you think is in their hand? What's their plan? And I guess as a casual player, I didn't really do that very much either. Just kind of focus on myself. What am I going to do right now? So what you want to do is, try to get your opponent's head and figure out what they're doing, what they're planning, and how you can counter that and use that to your advantage.
Sure. Just try to have knowledge of their deck, their playstyle, different things like that.
Yeah, everything.
Well, I suppose during any given match of Conquest, each game round definitely has a distinct layout and turn structure to it. There's kind of an ebb and flow throughout that structure. Players deploy their cards, you go to the command phase, you pick where your warlords go, you ultimately engage in combat, and then, every player has the opportunity to ready their cards and gain a kind of set amount of income, and then, of course, that entire process starts, all over again. But do you have any particular methods of trying to optimize your play? Like, what's your thought process over the course of, a game round?
It's kind of difficult to answer. It's a good question. I guess a lot of things happen even before the very first round of a game. And you come to a tournament or a game with your deck in hand. You should know your deck, in the ins and outs of it as best you can, and know what it can do, what it can't do, strengths and weaknesses. Is it more of an aggro deck or a control deck and whatnot? And then once you sit down across your opponent, you get to see their warlords, and right then and there, you should have a good idea what's in their deck. At this point in the game, it's not that big of a card pool, so as soon as you see their warlord, you probably have a good idea what's in their deck and what their plan kind of is, how to win the game. If they're more of an aggro deck like Kith or a control deck like Eldarith, and how does that work against your deck? And then they reveal the planets, and right there you can decide how that game will play out. It can be very different depending on what the planets are. If each planet shares the same icon, it could be a very quick planet or a very quick game. Turn 3 for a planet win, or if they all, sometimes it's impossible to win a game through planets until turn 5 or 6. That could be a very long game, so there's very big differences there, and even the resources on the planets too. If there's lots of cards, or vice versa, lots of resources, not much of the other, it can really change the gameplay too. Cards or resources can be quite rare, so you gotta adjust your play to that. There's lots of things to think about even before the game starts. That's one thing I love about Conquest. Unlike Magic or so, it's not too much ahead of time. Knowing your deck and stuff is important, but just right then and there, lots of the information, lots of things to think about before the game even starts. And of course, during the deploy phase, it's kind of the chess-like moves. I make a move, you make a move, and try to counter each other or whatnot. And the best part, the command phase, trying to decide where each of you are going to go for the turn. That's probably the most important thing. Each round deciding that, which sets up the combat phase. Depending where you went and your opponent went, who wants the first planet, who has initiative. That's always very important too. To have an initiative of the first planet, be very powerful. It's really hard to say exactly what, so many variables during each turn, but along the lines of that.
Sure. Well, it certainly seems like you just pay really careful attention to what to anticipate from your opponent. Just try to draw upon your knowledge and kind of foresight regarding their deck, knowing exactly what you'll have at your disposal or won't have. And of course, adjusting to the fact that during each game, the planet layout is going to be completely different. The battle abilities you'll be able to rely on are different. The number of turns that the game can last is going to always be changing. I suppose kind of one of my other questions here is, in regard to just a competitive game, there's scarcely anyone more formidable in a tournament scene than yourself. When a big event is coming up, how do you go about preparing for like a national or regional or world championship tournament?
Honestly, I don't think I prepare enough. I don't use Octagon at all, so that's probably the best way to prepare is constantly play on there whenever you need to. So there's a lot of good players on there. Like for Worlds last year, I just played with a buddy of mine once a week for about a month before the tournament. And only played about 3-4 games a week, and that was basically it. I played one tournament ahead of time and just kind of went with it. So this year, hard to say, but I should definitely put more time into it. But we'll see.
Well, I suppose just considering that relative to some other players I've spoken to, it seems like that's not too much preparation. Is there anything like special that you do? Like, is there a Jeremy Zwirn difference or?
I don't think so. I just kind of go with my instincts and just kind of wing it and see what happens. And
Sure, I guess maybe it's just natural talent. I suppose something I've wanted to ask a capable player such as yourself for quite a while, and you'll have to excuse me for the kind of abstract and philosophical nature of a lot of the questions I've been asking today, but something I'm very curious about is just the fact that during any single game of Conquest, only one player can walk away as the victor. Why is it that a player such as yourself ever loses a game?
well, kind of a tough question. Also, I hate to toot my own whistle or anything, but it's easy to blame bad luck on losing. It can kind of happen if you get into a really bad draw. I mean, sometimes there's nothing you can do. You just start losing all command every turn, and it's a downward spiral from there. But honestly, it usually comes down to mistakes. I make my fair share of mistakes, and they cost me games. And the best thing to do is try to learn from those mistakes and try not to repeat them. And this Conquest is a very in-depth game. There's a lot going on. It's very easy to make mistakes or suboptimal plays, and I think it's very, very difficult to play a whole game of Conquest without making a suboptimal choice. And usually, whoever makes the fewest mistakes or suboptimal choices will probably win the game. So,
Right. Well, just in your history of competitive gaming, are there any noteworthy mistakes that kind of stand out as being good learning experiences for you?
yeah, I've made quite a few, even at high-level tournaments. I think one that definitely stands out was the top four at the 2013 Warhammer Invasion tournament. I was playing against a Polish champion. He had a deck I didn't really see before. It was a combo deck, and was kind of doing an infinite loop until he won the game. So I was playing a Dark Elves deck that had some disruption, but not really enough. So I wasn't really sure how to combat his combo. But then went to game 3, and back then, or during Warhammer Invasion, it's a best of 3, which I really enjoy. So it's not just up to one game decides all. But he kind of started doing his combo. I did have one card in my deck I had in a hand that could maybe disrupt it, but I forgot to save one extra resource in order to play it.
Ah,
So I was like, oh, why did I do that? If I saved one more resource, I think I could have disrupted it. And I might have still lost, but I definitely had a much, much better chance of winning if I would saved that one resource. So sometimes you just miss things here or there. Don't, think ahead and just kind of forget to save one measly resource instead of playing this one card that, didn't really do enough for say that one resource for this different card that could have completely changed the game. But it happens. And
sure. I mean, just kind of a repeated theme as I've spoken to, all these national champions, regional champions, players that are just, fantastically skillful, such as yourself. It's just really optimizing the value, getting the utmost efficiency out of every single resource, every single card that you can, and really debating, what is the most worthwhile play, what's going to pay off the most in the long term, as opposed to what's, simple or convenient or perhaps seems best in the mere moment. And it certainly sounds like that kind of underlies what you were saying earlier, just having as much knowledge at your disposal as possible, in that maybe you were less than familiar with your opponent's, combo potential and different things like that. For Conquest specifically, we've recently seen our first ever deluxe expansion, and just like you said, our card pool is still quite small. I suppose, how do you view the state of balance in the game currently, maybe compared to some of our other LCGs?
Well, overall, I feel it's pretty good, but I think there's room for improvements. Ever since the game first came out, there's been a few factions that have usually been on top, Space Marines, Dark Elder, and a couple of factions, the Orcs and the Astral Militarum have usually been pretty much on the bottom. So it'd be nice to kind of get those moving, switching around a little bit, and over a year's time, it's starting to feel a little stale at the moment.
Right.
I guess not having a new release in 4 months or so now until the Tyranids bot comes out. I guess that doesn't help, but once the Tyranids do come out, they'll change some things. I still think Dark Elder, Space Marines, and probably Elder probably stay on top. Tyranids, I don't really have much experience with them yet. I haven't been able to get the box or anything. I think they'll be competitive, but maybe not tier 1 quite yet. I don't foresee them winning Worlds, but who knows.
Sure.
Still think Astral Militarum and Orcs will probably stay at the bottom for now. Hopefully the planetfall cycle will start to shift things and make it more interesting.
Well, I guess relative to some of FFG's other LCGs, does it seem like there's more diversity in a competitive sense, or is it, a relatively small pool of viable warlords and factions?
I guess it depends how you look at it. For like a truly competitive atmosphere like Worlds, I don't think there's too many competitive decks out there compared to other games. And Dark Elder, Space Marines are right towards the top. Elder, it's not as good as it used to be, but they could definitely still win, as it did at Nationals in America here. And other games, depends on what ones you look at, but I feel overall they're pretty diverse at the moment. I don't know how many games you play, but Conquest, it's definitely not bad. You could potentially take any deck and win a small tournament for surely. But something as big as Worlds, I think a lot of warlords kind of fall to the wayside if you want to win a big tournament like that.
Well, sure. I suppose just given your breadth of experience when it comes to competitive gaming, not just for LCGs, but really a range of different games like Magic the Gathering and several others, what do you kind of foresee being the future of Conquest? Like, does it compare favorably to some of its colleagues like Netrunner, Call of Cthulhu, just in regard to appeal? Like, do you see it becoming much bigger?
It's another tough question. I'm not really that familiar with the 40k universe. Never really got into it, so I don't really know how appealing that will be overall. I think right now the game's in a good spot. It definitely has a bright future. As for like Magic and Netrunner, those games are truly monsters. They're way out there, so I doubt Conquest will ever achieve the status of either of those, but it'll definitely hold its own. It'll be around for a long time, and I look forward to being there till the end.
Sure. Well, I suppose kind of the obvious question in kind of drawing this interview to a close is, seeing as how you were the 2014 World Champion and you ended up picking Space Marines, do you expect to participate in the 2015 World Championship?
Yeah, I plan on being there. Not quite sure what I'll play yet. It's a little ways away. It also depends what gets released by then. If the planetfall cycle will be available or not, that could change things. But right now, I'd kind of lean towards, the usual contenders. Space Marines, Dark Elder, possibly Tyranids, play around with them some more. Maybe Chaos, who knows. But it's unlikely I'll play, Orcs or Astral Militarum, but I'm definitely looking forward to it, and hopefully the metagame will kind of start to open up a little bit more, and Planetfall will make some of those underrepresented decks more playable, and maybe nerf down Dark Elder a little bit and broaden the horizon, and we'll see what happens.
Well, when it comes to your making the choice for, which warlord, what deck exactly to play, what are different things that you do consider? Like, given our range of Tier 1 options, what thoughts run through your mind when you're picking between, say, Kato or Ragnar or Kith or Eldorath?
Well, like Kato versus Ragnar is always a very difficult choice. I think both are excellent warlords. Both have good packs. Sig packs go with them. And just Space Marines overall are so strong. You can't really go wrong either way. So it's more of a personal preference. I kind of prefer Kato so far. Just kind of fits my style a little bit more and get more experience with it. But I played Ragnar quite a bit and also really enjoy him. And Kith and Elder, are almost the opposites in a way. One's be very aggressive and almost the Kith with all their Chimera tokens and Chimera Den, some truly, truly powerful cards, Archon's Terror, Archon's Palace, and Clavus Warleader. I can kind of bring that choke element to the game that other factions can't quite do. And then Eldrith, he's much more of a controlling warlord. People exhaust your opponent's units and nullify some of their key events and bring back some powerful units with the Gift of Isha. So it all depends on your style, what you kind of prefer, and also what you think the metagame is going to be like. If you fear a lot of Kith will be there, then Elder is probably not the best choice. It's not the greatest matchup for him, so you may want to try to go with something else to counter what you think will be most present there, your toughest competition. So, and of course, Chaos, doesn't seem to be as much play, but they're a very good faction too. They can handle Kith probably the best of any faction with their Warp Storms and Gleeful Plague Beasts and all that, so it's like kind of rock, paper, scissors things, some have better matchups than others, and it's one of the things that makes playing Conquest so interesting, trying to figure all that out and go with what, and that's all before the tournament even starts, lots and lots of decisions to make. It kind of goes what's more important, your deck or playing it, and Conquest both are very important. I probably lean towards playing your deck a little bit more being important since there's so many in-game decisions that matter. One mistake can cost you the entire game, so we'll see what happens this year at Worlds. Definitely looking forward to it.
Sure. Well, I suppose before we ultimately wind down this video and close things out here, any final pieces of advice or suggestions for someone to looking to break into competitive gaming? Or maybe if somebody's already started competing, any words of wisdom in regard to how they might be able to kind of up their game to a new level?
Yeah, one of the most important things is just play as many games as you can. Not just against anybody. Try to play against players who are better than you. Try to ask questions. The most important thing to do is make sure you play against better players and ask questions. How can you play that game better? What did I do wrong? Or why did you do that move? And be really particular about it. And if you constantly do that and play more and more games against better players and try to learn from your mistakes, kind of have to have that drive to really, for self-improvement, you want to do whatever you can to become better, put the work in and go on Octodon and try to find those players, and the community is excellent. They're willing to help, ask questions, and don't be afraid. It's the best way to improve.
Certainly. It never ceases to amaze me that just the range of players that we have access to in part of this community is just absurd.
Right.
Like I could, at the drop of a hat, go play against, somebody that won a championship in a different country, or I could, speak with a world champion such as yourself and conceivably, arrange a trip to go visit Fantasy Flight Center and maybe play a match or two against you, something like that.
Oh, definitely.
And certainly just receptivity to feedback could be integral in trying to improve yourself. If you never ask questions, maybe you never figure out some sort of flaw that you're making without even realizing it. So,
right. Be particular, just don't be afraid. Just ask away. And I think most Conquest players will be glad to help you out and share their knowledge. So if you don't have a local player base, go right on Octodon, sign up, and I'm sure there's plenty of players on there be willing to help you out.
Well, definitely. And I suppose just before we ultimately end things, anything else you'd like to mention or say, or any shout-outs you'd like to give?
Well, not really. I'm really enjoying what you've been doing, Mitch. I know you haven't been part of the community for very long, but you definitely become a very important person, and keep up the great work.
Well, thank you very much, and of course, thank you so much for your time today, Jeremy.
You're welcome.
It's been an honor speaking to you, and who knows, maybe I will have to arrange that trip to Roseville someday, but thank you very much, and have a fantastic evening.
Thank you. You too.
Well, with our interview having ultimately come to a close, I'll just conclude this video by saying thank you once again for watching. Interacting with viewers like you is the absolute highlight of my creating content for this channel, so please take a moment to let me know not just what you thought of this interview, but also what additional questions could I have asked or topics could I have discussed with Jeremy. And as always, I remain ever open to constructive criticism. If you know someone that would make a good candidate for a future interview, you're encouraged to share. But with that said, if you enjoyed this video, be sure to hit that like button and subscribe to my channel if you've not done so already. If you are already subscribed, you're encouraged to share this video, as the more eyes there are on this content, the more potential new players we might ultimately draw to this game, and as a result serve only to ever expand our Conquest community. Please feel free to contact me directly or keep in touch through any form of social media that you'd like. But in any case, thank you once again for watching, and be sure to check back in again soon for ever more Conquest LCG content to come.